Hello, good afternoon. Dr. Robbie here in the Natural History Museum at the aquarium. Just wanted to do a little exercise with you to show you something behind the scenes. Going to go look in our collections room, see what was going on there. I got a little fish story I wanted to tell you. So let's go have a look. So let's head on into our collections room and see what's going on. First we come into our dry collection, a space we keep really well dehumidified. So things like bird skins, coral skeletons, plant specimens and shells and insects are all in here, but we'll come back to that another time. What I wanted to show you were some interesting fish stories, but let's just get the big picture here. This is our wet collection room. This is where we have to keep animals preserved because of their soft tissues in formalin or alcohol, and that preserves things so they don't decay over time. And so we have a great library of specimens. This is our sort of section on fishes right here, and I'll spend a bit more time in there in a minute. But what I wanted to do is tell you a bit about some interesting fish that we're working on here. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this fish here called the beardfish. And it's a really unusual fish, lives in very deep water, and I'll explain why it's so significant. I want you to compare that against this fish here. This is called the bonefish. And the bonefish is part of a group of fishes that are pretty old. Not the most primitive fishes, but these are about 200 million years of age. The bonefish is one of 800 species. Most of them are made up of eels and things like tarpon. But the beardfish is a bit younger, about 100 million years of age, but there's only 6 species of beardfishes that we know across the whole globe. And that's compared to, say, the great diversity of fishes in what we call the Percomorpha, the more recent fishes that are probably only about 50 million years of age. So we're going to look at the bonefish, and we're going to compare it to the beardfish, and then we're going to compare a more recent fish called the goatfish. And I want to tell you a little bit about their biology. So what makes the bonefish so distinctive, what really points to their level of being an ancient fish, is the fact that they don't have any really true spines. If we look at our dorsal fin here, it's the fin material is very soft, very flexible. It doesn't have anything really hard in there. It's just a tool, a fin, just to help the fish navigate. And that's in contrast to our beardfishes, which is quite a bit younger, about 100 million years of age, and has a really important bony, true spine right up here in the dorsal fin. So that's a distinction between the older bonefish and the beardfish. And so our more modern fishes, the goatfishes, and all things like wrasses and parrotfishes and jacks and things like that, all have lots and lots of really hard spines in the dorsal fins and the pectoral fins and the anal fins here. So that feature of having a bony spine really sets apart the modern fishes from these older fishes, except for the beardfish, which has that modern spine, but it also has some really old bones that are found in this fish, but they're internal. I can't really show them to you. So what's really distinctive about the beardfish is its habitat. It lives in very deep water. The 6 fishes that we have from Bermuda were found at like 200 meters, 300 meters, 400 meters, 500 meters. So that's anywhere between 200 or 300 feet down to well over 1,000 feet. And what's peculiar about this fish, you can see it's got a very, very large eye. That means it lives in very light, limited water and has to rely on a good vision. But it has these very peculiar barbels that are on the underside of the jaw. They're sort of dangled down, they're quite flexible, and the fish uses these to sort of feel along the bottom, sort of picking up chemical smells of what might be a potential prey or food source there. That's what's in there. And that's actually a feature that we can also find in our goatfishes. The goatfishes also have a pair of barbels right here that it uses for poking around on the bottom. And we often have a type of goatfish in our tanks, and you can see them sticking them forward, and they sort of put them ahead of their eyes and sort of feel around and see whether there's anything in there that's worth going after. One more point about the beardfish and why we're so interested in it is I had two scientists, Dr. Mark Wilson and Dr. Terry Graham, were visiting in 2018, and they wanted to look at our 6 specimens. They were doing a study of beardfishes around the world, trying to see what they could learn about the diversity of fishes. And this is a recent publication, a map that shows all the beardfishes around the world. So some are associated with seamounts like Bermuda out here in the middle of the ocean, or in the Azores, Easter Island, but some are attached to continents like Australia off the coast of Japan. And again, they all live in very deep water, but there's only 6 species now at a global level. So over the last 100 million years, not much has changed for these fishes because they live deep in the ocean where things have been relatively stable. What was so interesting for Dr. Wilson and Dr. Graham when they got here is they looked at our fish and they thought, okay, well, of all these fishes, 4 of them look pretty familiar. They sort of fit in with the specimens that we can see in the Caribbean and in other parts of the Atlantic, particularly this one, polymyxoloi. But there are 2 fish, they said, no, they don't really look exactly like the other ones. So we want to look at them. So they took them away. They've been studying them, doing studies of their bones by x-raying them, and most importantly, looking at the DNA of these fishes. And they think they found a new species of beardfish living only in Bermuda. There's not that many fishes around the world that have been caught to study. It may well live somewhere else, but it hasn't been described before. So we're looking forward to them concluding that work. So it'll be really interesting to celebrate a new fish living on our seamount around Bermuda. But I just want to finish up by sort of telling you a bit of a story about what these fishes represent here. And the way we organize the fishes in the museum is a lot like the story I just talked about, that the oldest fishes are kind of at the beginning. So here in our collection, up here, we have, at the beginning would be all our sharks, and up here is the Alopiformes. That's where we sort of put in all our things like our bone fishes, which would live right here. And then here come all the eels down here, which are all in that group, the Alopomorpha, Alopiformes. And then the rest of the story sort of continues. So if you go down the aisle here, you're really looking at more and more recent fishes. Some are still pretty old. You can come up here and look at some other deep water fishes. This is a hatchet fish up here. Got those white dots there are what we call photophores. They glow underwater to help the fish communicate or confuse its predators. Here's another deep water stomid fish right here. All sorts of really scary looking fishes that live in the deep ocean. So as we go along, we come down here, and this is the shelf where the other beardfishes are right here. So they're pretty early on in the sequence of all the fishes, right? They're an old fish. Well, I hope you found this information about the fishes kind of interesting. All sorts of wonderful things to be explored in our ocean, and our job is to conserve it, and we have to do that. We have to study it and know what's going on. So it's fascinating to think about a new fish species that's been there all this time. We just didn't know much about it because we don't get a chance to spend any time studying the deep ocean. So that's just one of the stories from here at the museum. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Hello everyone, I'm Jenny Gosling. I'm the collections officer here at the Natural History Museum, and I'm here to talk about some of the objects in our collections. Some of you might remember seeing these lovely paintings around our site. They were brought back from a scientific expedition organized by Vincent Astor to the Galapagos Islands in 1930. They were painted by Wilfred Swancourt Bronson, who is an American natural history illustrator. And the thing I really like about them is they have such a sense of movement. A lot of the time, when you're looking at paintings, scientific illustrations, they're very static. You will have a side-on view of the animal. There will be things like the size, the dimensions, the distinguishing characteristics, the color. All of those things will be accurately portrayed. But what you're not getting is a sense of what that animal was like in its life. And I think these show that really well. And what sort of behaviors are we looking at? Well, this is all about food. So we have the blue marlin hunting the black-spotted porgies. Then we have the cormorant, which is special because it's the heaviest of the cormorants, and it's also the only one to have lost the ability to fly. But what it lacks in flight, it makes up for in swimming ability, as you can see as it hunts these fish. And then finally, we have my favorite of the lot, the marine iguana. Now, the marine iguana, I think, is such a special painting. It shows a relatively rare behavior, even amongst marine iguanas. Now, the marine iguana is the only modern lizard to have made the adaptation to get its food from the sea. Like our parrotfish, it scrapes algae from the rocks with its teeth, but only 5% of them will dive down to the depths. Most of them don't have enough mass in relation to their surface area to withstand the cold temperatures for very long, so they get all their algae near the surface. But for the largest individuals, they can dive down to depths of up to 30 meters, where they will stay. Normally it's about 5 or 10 minutes, but they can stay for 30 to 60 minutes at a time. And the reason they do this is there's much less competition for the resource. And there are several adaptations that they have made to allow them to do this. They have that row of spines running around along their back, and that acts as a stabilizer. They have a large, powerful tail, and that helps them to swim more effectively. They have powerful limbs with sharp claws, which allow them to grab onto the rocks, even if they're in a strong current. And finally, they have that blunt nose that allows them to get really close to the rock to get at the algae. There's a couple more adaptations that you can't see from this picture. They have heavier bones in their forearms, and that acts as a form of ballast. And finally, because they're eating a diet that's incredibly high in salt, they need to get rid of that salt. And they do this by excreting it in their nostrils. And then when they need to get rid of it, they sneeze it out. And so with that final beautiful image of a marine iguana sneezing salty snot, I will wish you a very happy World Oceans Day. Thank you.